They already know who to call when the car breaks down at midnight, when someone needs a ride to the airport at 5 a.m., when a friend needs help moving apartments on the one weekend you had free. You know because it's you. You've built a life where you are, without ever exactly deciding to be the person everyone can count on. The fixer, the one who shows up, the one who remembers birthdays, drives 4 hours for a crisis, picks up on the second ring at 2 a.m. You've gotten so good at being needed that being needed has started to feel like being loved. But somewhere quietly, a different, harder question has been sitting underneath all of it, one you've probably never said out loud. If you stopped being useful tomorrow, if you had nothing left to give, no advice to offer, no favor to do, no problem to fix, would they still want you in the room? If that question makes your stomach drop even a little, you already know the answer isn't as certain as you'd like it to be. And that uncertainty is the whole problem. Because somewhere along the way, you learned to substitute one thing for another. You learned that being needed and being loved feel almost identical from the inside. Almost, not quite. And the gap between those two things is where a lot of quiet exhaustion lives. This is about how that substitution happens, what it costs you, and how to finally tell the difference. Donald Winnicott, the psychoanalyst who spent much of his career studying the relationship between infants and their caregivers, described something he called the false self. It's not a diagnosis, it's a survival strategy, one that starts so early most people can't remember the moment it began. Winnicott's idea was this: when a child's environment responds warmly and consistently to who they actually are, when their needs and feelings are met without the child having to earn that response, they develop what he called a true self. A stable sense that they are loved simply because they exist, not because of what they do. But when the environment isn't reliably attuned like that, when love feels conditional, when a caregiver is distracted, overwhelmed, inconsistent, or needs something from the child rather than the other way around, the child adapts. They learn to read the room. They learn what response earns warmth, what behavior keeps the peace, what version of themselves is welcome. And they build that version, carefully, instinctively, because a child's nervous system will do almost anything to keep a caregiver close. Winnicott called this adaptive, accommodating version the false self. This isn't a story about bad parents. Most of the time, nobody in this pattern is a villain. Parents overwhelmed by their own lives, their own stress, their own unresolved histories, aren't choosing to teach a child that love is conditional. It happens in the gaps, in the moments where attention was somewhere else, where a child's realest feelings were too inconvenient to fully receive, and a child doesn't experience that as a parenting failure. A child experiences it as fact, as the rule of how the world works. Be useful, be easy, be helpful, solve the problem. That's how you keep people close. So the false self gets very, very good at one specific skill: being needed. It becomes fluent in reading what other people require and providing it, often before being asked. And because that skill works, because it does keep people close, because it does earn warmth and gratitude and a place in the room, it gets reinforced constantly, all the way into adulthood. The trouble is what happens underneath. The true self, the part of you that exists and deserves love without having to perform a function first, doesn't get much practice. It doesn't get asked what it wants. It doesn't get to show up messy or need something without immediately offering something in return. It waits. And the false self keeps working, keeps fixing, keeps being needed, mistaking the response it gets for the thing it was actually looking for all along. That's the confusion at the center of this. Being needed produces real, warm, immediate feedback. Gratitude, relief, closeness in the moment. It looks so much like love that most people never stop to check whether it actually is. Let's talk about what this actually costs, because it's more than exhaustion, though it is definitely that too. The first cost is a specific kind of quiet fear that runs underneath everything: the fear of becoming unnecessary. If your worth was built on being useful, then usefulness isn't optional, it's structural, it's load-bearing. Which means any situation where you can't fix something, can't help, can't be needed, doesn't just feel disappointing. It feels like a threat to your place in the relationship itself. The second cost is that you end up in relationships that are underneath the warmth, actually transactional, even when nobody involved would ever call them that. You give, they receive, and the relationship runs smoothly as long as that flow continues in one direction. But real intimacy requires being able to receive as well as give. It requires letting someone see you when you have nothing to offer, nothing to fix, nothing useful in your hands. If you've never practiced that, the giving relationships can start to feel safe precisely because they never test whether you're loved for anything beyond what you provide. The third cost is resentment that builds so slowly you don't notice it accumulating. Every time you show up because you feel you have to, rather than because you freely want to, a tiny debt gets logged somewhere, even if you'd never admit that to yourself. Over years, that debt compounds. People who've spent decades being the reliable one often describe a bitterness they can't quite explain, aimed at the very people they've helped the most. It isn't fair, and it isn't really about those people specifically. It's about years of unspoken exchanges that were never actually agreed to, running in the background the entire time. The fourth cost, and the deepest one, is that you never actually get to find out if you're loved. Not really, because the test never happens. You never stop being useful long enough to see what's left when the usefulness is gone. Some part of you avoids that test on purpose, because as long as you never take it, you never have to face the answer. That avoidance can look, from the outside, like generosity. From the inside, it's often something closer to fear, wearing generosity's clothes. Here's how to tell if this pattern has quietly taken over. You feel a spike of anxiety when you have nothing to offer someone. A friend calls just to talk, no problem to solve, and some part of you scrambles to find a way to be useful anyway, a piece of advice, a resource, something, anything. Because sitting in a conversation with nothing to give feels oddly exposed. You struggle to ask for help, even when you desperately need it. This one is almost universal in this pattern. The person who is endlessly available to everyone else is often the last person who will admit they're drowning, because asking for help means, for a moment, being the one who needs rather than the one who's needed. That role reversal feels unfamiliar, even unsafe. You feel a flash of something close to panic when someone stops needing you. A friend gets independent. A partner solves their own problem without you. A family member stops calling in a crisis, and instead of relief, you feel a strange loss, as if the relationship itself has weakened, even though nothing about their feelings toward you has actually changed. You measure your value by your usefulness in almost every relationship, without quite realizing you're doing it. You can list easily what you do for the people in your life. You struggle to answer what they'd say they love about you that has nothing to do with what you do for them. You feel resentful but can't quite locate why. This one shows up as irritability toward people you've helped the most, a low simmer that seems disproportionate to whatever small thing triggered it, because the real cause isn't the small thing. It's years of giving that was never actually asked for out loud, being spent quietly against a debt no one else knows exists. And the clearest sign of all, you can't remember the last time you let someone take care of you without immediately trying to even the score. Breaking this pattern isn't about becoming less generous. It's about learning to separate two things that got fused together a long time ago: your worth and your usefulness. The first step is practicing receiving on purpose, in small, low-stakes ways. Let someone pick up the check without insisting on getting the next one immediately. Let a friend help you carry something without waving them off. Say yes when someone offers to help before you've even asked. This will feel strange, maybe even a little unbearable at first, and that reaction itself is information. It's showing you exactly how unfamiliar the experience of simply receiving has become. The second step is testing the relationship in a small, safe way. Pick someone you trust and, deliberately, show up with nothing to offer. Don't bring advice, don't fix anything. Just be present, honestly, even if that means admitting you don't have it together that day. Watch what happens. Most of the time, the people who actually love you will meet you there without missing a beat. That's the data you've been avoiding collecting for years, and it's usually kinder than you expect. The third step is learning to sit with the discomfort of not being needed without immediately trying to solve it. When someone in your life doesn't need you for something, Resist the urge to manufacture a way to be useful anyway. Let the moment simply be what it is. This builds tolerance for a truth that the false self never wanted you to learn. Your presence has value independent of your function.
The fourth step is asking yourself a harder question directly and actually sitting with the answer instead of rushing past it. If I had nothing to offer this person, no fixing, no favors, no advice, would they still want me here? For some relationships, the honest answer might be uncomfortable. That's useful information too, not a failure, just clarity about which connections were built on something real and which were built on function. The fifth step is grieving what the false self cost you, because there is genuinely something to grieve here. Years spent earning love that, it turns out, was often available all along, without needing to be earned at all. That grief is real, and rushing past it usually just buries it somewhere it'll resurface later. Let it be sad for a while. It's allowed to be sad. On the other side of this, something changes that's hard to describe until you felt it. The relationships that survive you being less endlessly useful get real in a way they weren't before, because now they're actually being tested for the first time. What remains isn't gratitude for your usefulness. It's something closer to genuine affection, tested and confirmed rather than assumed. You stop being exhausted by people you love. Giving from abundance because you want to feels completely different in the body than giving from obligation, because you're afraid of what happens if you stop. The same action, help someone move, show up for a crisis, can either drain you or fill you, depending entirely on whether it came from fear or from freedom. You finally get evidence, real evidence, not assumption, that you are loved for existing, not just for producing. That evidence changes something foundational. The anxious hum underneath every interaction, the constant low-grade calculation of your usefulness, finally has somewhere to rest. And the resentment fades, because it was never really about the people you were helping. It was about years of unspoken exchange finally becoming spoken, finally becoming a choice instead of a quiet obligation running invisibly in the background of every relationship you had. You were never supposed to have to earn the right to be loved simply for existing. That was true when you were a child who needed it and didn't get to test it. And it's still true now. Being needed will always feel good. It's not the enemy here. But it was never supposed to be the whole story. And if it's been standing in for love your entire life, you deserve to finally find out what the real thing feels like. Start small. Let someone help you with something you didn't ask for help with. Watch what happens. That's where this actually begins.